Hi everyone, I'm Carol Keller, independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator from Illinois in the United States, and I have for you today a bunch of different alternatives for this month's paper pumpkin kit. I've had a lot of fun working with it. The card bases, the envelopes, everything in the kit is just beautiful. And so I have found a way to make 40 cards out of this kit with the supplies that are included, a few extra things, some card bases and things like that. So let's get started. All right, here is the kit and it is called Sweet Sunflowers. And I want to show you a couple of things about it before we get started. It comes with a stamp set, which you can see is already very well used. It's got a sunflower and a center of a sunflower and some sentiments, bees, wonderful. 2 ink spots instead of 1 this time, soft suede and crushed curry. There is a free gift, which I'll show you in a moment, and this gives you an example of a card using that, so we're going to come back to that later. Here are some sneak peeks of the next couple of kits, talking about the different holidays, one being Halloween and one being Christmas. So you can check out the sneak peeks if you go to the Paper Pumpkin Facebook page, Paper Pumpkin Fan Club it's called. You will see a sneak peek of next month's kit. And then these are the cards that you would make if you make the kit the way it calls for. And on the back, remember always to double check that you have all the components, and if not, call Stampin' Up! And they will make it right. There are some alternatives here, but mine are going to be different from that. But I just had to show you some components, some of the cards that come, or all of them actually. These are the 3 card bases that come with the kit. And what we're going to do is cut them in half and use all of them. Use both halves because, oh my goodness, they're gorgeous. And these are going to pair up with that free gift, which I'll show you in a sec. The envelope is also gorgeous. We are going to use that for a card front. You can cut the flap off and use that on your envelope to decorate it. And the back part you can use to make labels, and I'm going to show you that as well. This is the die cut for one of the flowers. We're going to use that to make a few cards. And then again, here is the free gift. There are 8 of these, and from these 8 we are going to get 16 cards just with that. So let me put this aside and we will get started. So here is the first card base that is shown in the kit, and all I'm going to do is just cut that right down the center to make 2 card bases. And so when you cut them in half, then you end up with 2 card bases. So like I said, we're going to make 2 different cards. This is the one we're going to use with this one, and this piece will be used. I've got 2 different options. So I'm not necessarily going to put all of the cards together, but what I am going to do is show you some tips for using the cards and showing you what components I used. So for this first one, like I said, we cut it in half and we end up with, here is 1 card base, and here's the other one. And so what I did was I took some other stamp sets and some components from the kit. So the little honeycomb vellum comes with the kit. There are 6 of them. So with this, you would make obviously 3 of these cards, and you have your option of stamping the flowers first and then cutting them out. These 2 have die cuts to cut them out. This one I fussy cut myself because there's not a companion die. And then I also wanted to show how to do it by just stamping directly on the card base or the card front. So let me pull that one back in, and we'll move this out of the way for a moment, and I will show you how to do this one. So I am bringing in for this our wonderful masking paper, new in the new annual catalog that started in May. And since this is the side I'll be peeling off, I'll be stamping on the other side. And you can see I've got a little smudge here, but that doesn't matter because this is just our mask. So I'm going to take 2 of the flowers. Both of them come from the Honeybee home stamp set. So I'm going to use this one and this one. So I've got them here. And my Memento black ink pad. I'm going to ink them both up. And they don't have to be perfect. I just need to know where to die cut to make my mask. So I'm going to stamp one here and the other one here. And I will die cut those with the dies that go with that stamp set, and I'll be right back. I forgot to mention that these are the Honeybee Blooms dies that I used. So now, one thing I do want you to note is that since this one is going to be on the right hand side, I moved the die way over because I want it to be right at the edge. I want it to stamp right at the edge there to get good coverage, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. And this one, because it goes on this side, I put it way over to, moved it over more toward the left, so it would be hopefully right on that line, which it is. I'm going to grab my Take Your Pick tool, and first we're going to stamp actually. So, and I'm going to stamp them closer than I did here. I'm going to stamp them more like this one where it's die cut so that they overlap. This was more of an afterthought, so I had to find a way to pretty much not overlap them, but I want to show you how to do it so I think it will look nicer. So we are going to start with the stamps and some Memento black ink. We'll start with this one. Get some good coverage. And I'm going to stamp it a little closer to the center than I did on the first one. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the other one. And I'm going to do it about like this, because again, I want overlap this time. I want all three of them to overlap. And now here is where the mask comes in. I'm going to grab my Take Your Pick tool and take the paper off the back. It might already be started here. Nope. So I'm going to see if I can get it started. And once you do, it comes off very easily, just peels right off. And you do want to take the masking paper and put it on you or on your clothing or something like that to get it a little less sticky. It is very sticky. And if you use it like this, it may tear your cardstock. Ask me how I know. So we're just gonna lay this right here, right along the edge of where I stamped. And we're going to do the same thing with this one. Whoops. I'm trying not to press it too hard because I don't want it to tear, but I think I'm not pressing it hard enough. And just this side really is what matters. Although it has to, as long as it's held down, it's fine. And we take the other one off. I'm going to do the same thing. Take a little bit of the adhesive off. Whoops. And again, it doesn't matter that it's torn because I can just place it where I need it, and I'll show you that. Because I use these until I'm either done making the cards or until the stickiness is all gone. And so I do sometimes use it in pieces for that reason. So again, we're going to put this right near the edge. And then we're going to lay this one, whoops, it's a little bit crooked. And then lay this one here. So you can see it doesn't matter that it's in two pieces. Now I'm going to take the third stamp. This one comes from Quiet Meadow. And I'm also going to stamp that in Memento black. Because what I want is for this one to look like it is behind the other two. And so I'm just going to do this. So I want it pretty much in the center and with the stems more toward the left. So like this. And so now, when I carefully pull those masks off, there we have it. So it looks like a beautiful bunch of flowers all together. So the next thing that I'm going to do on this one is I am going to bring in a scrap because we're going to use some Stampin' blends and I'm going to color them. And the nice thing is this is going to be layered over a card front, a basic white card front. So it doesn't matter, you know, there's going to be some ink that shows here, but then it's going to go on the card base and nobody will be the wiser. And I'm not going to do all the coloring right now. I'm just going to show you my process. I started with a light Mossy Meadow Stampin' blend and I went over all of the stems. I used the fine tip end, not the brush end. You see that means it's wider, and there's your narrow fine tip or writing end. And I went over all of the lines of all of the stems and the leaves. And I'm not being super careful because I know part of it's going to be hidden by a tag. I mean, I want it to look nice, of course, and I'm going to be more careful toward the top. And I find it's easier to go out to the point rather than starting from the point and coming in to get a nice point at the edge, although of course that one made a liar out of me. So we would do that with all the stems and leaves. I used light Melon Mambo for the flower on the left, and I am using the brush end, but I'm being very careful with the smaller ones. And you just go all the way around. And we've got overlap of flowers, so I'm trying to be extra careful here. And so you color in all of the ones like this one that come from that stamp. And you can refer to your stamp if you're not sure which flower goes with which stamp. For the middle one, I used light Night of Navy. And so the same thing, just color in the flowers. Using the brush end again. And then last but not least, I used dark Blackberry Bliss. And I did use the fine tip end for this, for these flowers. And I did pretty much move from the center to the edges because I found that easiest. And so once you have finished with that, you end up with something again that looks like this. The other option, like I said, is to stamp them on, I stamped them on basic white, used my dies to cut these two, and fussy cut this one because like I said, there's not a die that matches that from the Meadows dies. Then I just added a piece of the vellum honeycomb. There are 6 of them that come with the kit, so I use them on this card. That will take up 3, and then I didn't use them on any of the other cards, but I may go back and add when I do some multiples, since I haven't made up all 40 cards yet. And the one thing that I did do before this goes down on your basic white card base, and we can pull this out. So before it goes down on that card base, you're going to put ribbon on the bottom, and I just put a length of ribbon with glue dots, excuse me, on the back side. So on the, you know, they're about this long, and then on the edges that overlap to the back, there's a glue dot. You can see there's some of my coloring coming through. And this one, I didn't cut it exactly, so I will run that through my trimmer again to get a little bit of a cleaner edge before I put the ribbon on. And then once you put the ribbon on, you can adhere it to your card front. Definitely use multi-purpose liquid glue because that way you can position it exactly. For this one especially, if you wanted to, I didn't cut any of them down. They're all just card front sizes. But if you wanted to, you could cut this down to 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches and then put a mat in using one of these colors behind it. But I chose not to do that for this kit, but it's certainly an option. And then once I stamped the die cut that also comes with the kit, there are 4 of these as well. And I think it might be meant to go this way, but the sentiment also fits this way, and I wanted it that way for my card. Then for this one, I just took a length of ribbon and I actually went right off the roll. Let me grab it so I can show you. And I took it and just fed it underneath like this, and then tied it. For this one, I tied it in a bow first, right off the roll, just tied a bow. I like doing this because it saves ribbon. There's not a whole lot of waste when you do this. And you can make it whatever size you want. So I wanted a little bit of a smaller one. And then once I'm happy with the size, or once I was happy with the size for this one, then I just put a glue dot on the back and adhered it to the card. One thing you could do that I didn't do was add some bling. That is, of course, always an option, and I will show you some of the bling that I used on the other cards. But my thought today was to make things kind of interchangeable so that you could do things on different cards if you wanted to. But that is the first one. And then for the other half of that card front, I didn't realize till afterwards that it was somewhat similar to what was actually the design for the card, except they had, because I didn't realize they used this piece until I went and looked at it after the fact. But here they had the sunflower from the kit. There's a die cut and there is a stamp. And the stamp is actually a little bit larger than this. And the idea, which I will show you, well, I'll show you when I get to that card, because I did use it for another card. But anyway, I used this from the Art Gallery stamp set and used the companion dies to cut it out. And I did it on very vanilla because I didn't want stark white. You could also do it on So Saffron, and I'll show you what I did on another card with that. And the same thing, I put the ribbon on, a length of ribbon, before I adhered this card to the card front. I stamped several bees on the sentiment label and over here, and I did color them in with my light So Saffron Stampin' Blend. And this is So Saffron and this is Garden Green. And all I did was take the stamp. So I took the stamp and I took 2 of my Stampin' Write markers. Do not use your blends directly on your stamps. They will ruin them. These are my water-based Stampin' Write markers. And I just colored in the image. So actually I did usually do the light color first. So I started with So Saffron, or excuse me, this is Crushed Curry, and colored in the flowers. And again, I'm not going to do the whole thing here, but I just want you to show you the process. So you color them in. One thing I did find too, when I used this set the very first time, I happened to also be using my markers. And when I stamped it, it was very splotchy. It wasn't a smooth, pretty image. And all you have to do, if that's the case, is use your Stampin' Mist and your Stampin' Scrub and just clean the stamp really well. Once I did it the next time, it was beautiful. And once you have all the flowers done in Crushed Curry, I then take Mossy Meadow, and again, you're using the brush end for these, even though some of the spaces are small. And then you're going to fill in where the stems are and the leaf. And then once that is complete, some people will huff or breathe on it to keep it wet, but I find that if you work quickly, it really isn't an issue. Then I stamp that, like I said, on very vanilla. You could also use So Saffron, and then I cut it out. So that's how I had the 2 colors on the one image. Another thing for the label, there are 3 of these that come with the kit. And to get more bang for my buck, I basically cut these into 4ths and just put the little, I'll show you, I cut them into 4ths, just eyeballing and trying to make them as straight as possible. You could use your trimmer if you're worried about that. And then I took my label, and once I stamped my sentiment, I put a glue dot. Actually, I put the glue dots on here. So I put a glue dot here, and then attached 2 of these to the ends, made them, you know, however long I wanted, and made sure that they were even and straight. And so that's how I got I was able to use these then for more cards. So that is one tip. And then I used some champagne rhinestones to decorate, and some, this is open weave ribbon and fresh Freesia. And so those are what I use for this card. The other thing that I use that also comes with the kit is this little flower bouquet. And I ended up using it on one of my first cards, but I wish I hadn't. I wish I had saved all 3, because now I only have 1 more to use on another one. But I will show you an alternative for that as well. So those are 2 of the cards. So with those, you can make, with those and 3 sheets of basic white cardstock, you can make 6 cards. And for the next 6 cards, I am using this card base, and I actually used it in a different way. It's shown so that it's upright like this, but again, I wasn't paying attention to the pictures, and I thought it looked nice this way too. So this was the way I designed my card. And so this obviously uses the first half just turned on its side. For this one, nothing special. I stamped the bees and the hello directly on my card front. And I also, again, put the ribbon on before I attached it to the card front. And then I just tied a knot here when it was on. I also might add bling to this one, but for this one I really wanted something very simple because I wanted what I considered designer series paper to shine because I think it's beautiful. So just emphasizing that card front and not doing too much to take away from it. And on the inside, I did for a one-of-a-kind friend. This is a leaf stamp from the set, and so I stamped it in Mossy Meadow once, twice, and 3 times without re-inking, and I probably would do that also on the envelope. The For a One-of-a-Kind Friend also obviously comes from the kit. And let me show you for the previous card, I did something similar. I used this in Melon Mambo, and for the Hello, I stamped it in Rich Razzleberry once, twice, and 3 times without re-inking. And I think probably I would put this on the envelope or maybe both on the front left corner. And here again on this card, I did the same thing for a one-of-a-kind friend and used that 3 times. I just really like the look of that. So some ideas for the inside. So that is card number 1 from this card base. And here is card number 2. So this again uses the back. And for this, I did see that the stem went this way. So I used that as I used it upright rather than turning it on its side. For this one, I did something that I think was very cool that I discovered that I really like. So I am going to show you a little bit of this one. Let me move this to the side and let me cut this card base because I need it. I had sort of a practice one of these, so I only have one left. So I'll cut this in half and be right back. All right, so for this card, I am going to need this, so we'll start with this. I have one of the die cuts from the set, which there are 4 of them from the kit. And I have the stamp, that's the sunflower. And it does tell you to stamp the center first, but you can do it either way. Typically you do stamp the center first just because it's darker, and so then it's easier to see the position, but I did not have any trouble doing it this way. And I wanted to make sure my sunflowers were positioned the way I wanted them. So we are going to start with that. And I'm using crushed curry, same color that comes with the kit. And we are going to stamp it 3 times. I'm going to get some good ink. We're actually going to stamp it 6 times because now that it's inked, I'm going to stamp it here and then lift and turn and line it up with that center and stamp again. It just gives you more layers of color. I am going to re-ink and then do the same thing here. And then turn it, and it doesn't matter how much you turn it. The idea is just to lay down some more color. And then for the die cut, I'm going to bring in my scrap again because actually the die cut is smaller than the stamp. So again, we're going to ink. And it does actually line up, but it doesn't really matter that much because it is larger. So I just stamped and then pulled it off, turned and stamped again, lining it up with that center so that the center part is the same and there's overlap there. So I hope that makes sense. And next we're going to take our soft suede ink pad and put the centers in. So again, you can see pretty clearly. It's hard to do this without my head being over it, so I'm going to stand up so I can see better and put it right in the middle, and then do the same thing on the card front, re-inking each time. And so there are my sunflowers, and that one's a little off, but that's the magic of doing it live or on video. And again, were I doing it myself, I would have my head definitely right over there so I could make sure it was positioned exactly. And now I'm going to bring in Mossy Meadow, and there's a leaf stamp that comes again with the kit. And so I am doing, you could do a mask, you could stamp and then cut out, and just the way I showed you earlier, except you would have to fussy cut it, cut the sunflower out from the masking paper. But I found a trick that works just like masking. All I'm going to do, instead of inking up the whole leaf, I'm just going to ink up the edge And then I'm going to place it so that the ink part is near the edge of the sunflower. And so it looks like a mask. It looks like you masked, but you didn't, because I thought that was a pretty neat way to do that. And I'm going to do another one. I know that I'm going to put this sunflower about here. So again, just lay it down. And that one you really could, I think I did stamp the whole thing actually, because I knew that this was going to go over it. And let's see, where do we want a third one? Just re-ink every time, and maybe we'll do it here this time. And so you're just kind of overlapping with the edge of that sunflower, and then it looks like a mask, but you didn't have to go through the trouble of doing one. The tag comes with the kit, and I just stamped thank you from the set. This is Starry Sky metallic woven ribbon, and there was just a little bit of blue in the sky. That's why I picked it up. This is actually Night of Navy, but the Starry Sky ribbon I thought worked really well. And I bumped this up with dimensionals. There are mini dimensionals that come with the kit, so I did bump that up. And so that's how I did this card. And for the last card base, which looks like this, I also used the wonderful honeycomb die cut that comes with for free in the set. There are 8 of them. So with this, you can actually make 16 cards. Let me show you how. These are the cards that I did. And here's where I use that flower. And I actually cut it apart to make 2 sections. But I think instead I would use these flowers. These stamps come from the Happiness Abounds stamp set. And again, I stamped them on Saffron, and then I colored them with my blends, and I used light pumpkin pie for the centers, the dark pumpkin pie for the next kind of layer, and then I think it was dark melon mambo on the outside. And so I was mimicking this because I knew I didn't have enough of them, because with this, cutting this the way you do, you end up with, you can make 16 cards since there are 8 of these. And so again, I cut the card bases in half, which gives you 6. And then for the rest, I would get 5 sheets of Mossy Meadow cardstock and make 2 card bases from each one. So that's 10 more card bases. For the honeycomb, all I did was take my, and this idea comes from this suggestion in the kit. So I'm basically using this card idea. They used the die cuts that come with the kit, but I knew there weren't enough, like I said before. So I used the Celebrate Sunflowers stamp set instead, and just stamped the largest one, and then cut it out with the companion dies. And I also want to show you then how to do the inside, or how I think they did the inside, because what they did, or not the inside, but the die cut, because I think what they did was just cut out a random section, and then that's what they used on the one card, but I just used then the rest of it, or the negative, for the second card. So I'm just grabbing my paper snips. And so again, I think you just kind of start somewhere, and it doesn't matter where, and just cut an uneven shape around the inside, but leaving some along the edges. And then meeting up back where you started. So here are my 2 sections. I use one for one card and one for the other, but as you see, it would be, if I put it in the middle, it would be completely covered, or almost completely covered, by the sunflower. So I'm just going to cut it down the middle so that I can position it like this on my card front, and then put the sunflower sort of in the middle, and that way you see that beautiful gold honeycomb on each end. And then we would, like I said, use this one on the second card, and there are lots of bees in the kit. I believe there are 28 of them that come in the kit. So there are enough for 9 of those cards. Plus there are 2 bee stamps that come in the set. So you could stamp straight on your project, or you could stamp on basic white and then fussy cut them out, whatever you prefer. Now for the tag, I used this one came from the kit, but there aren't enough of them, so we have a way to make some that look very, very similar. As I said earlier, we're going to use this for a card front, but the back section I have been using for some tags. So when I wanted a long tag, I cut it this way, and when I needed a shorter tag, I cut it this way, and I cut them in 1/2-inch increments, and there was a reason for that. So let me cut one out and I will show you and be right back. All right, so I have cut a 1/2-inch strip from that envelope, like I said, and you'll see the little creases here from the fold, but I'm not worried about that because the first thing we're going to do is actually cut that off. So I'm taking my Lovely Labels Pick-a-Punch, and the edge here is very similar to what's in the kit. So I'm just gonna move it all the way in to the back and make sure you put it all the way to the edge. You'll see why that's important in a moment, and make sure that it's straight. And we're going to save that little piece to use in just a minute. But in the meantime, I'm going to grab my thank you stamp from the set and my crushed curry ink. And we're going to ink it and then stamp the sentiment. And I want it to be smaller, so I'm going to stamp it towards one side. And now with that little Chad, we use that to decide where we need to cut this so it will make the right size sentiment. So I want the same amount of space here as here, and that actually doesn't look bad right about there. So I'm going to take my pencil and mark the outer edge, and that tells me where I need to cut. So you can use your trimmer or your paper snips, and we're going to cut that off. And now because it's small, we may have some issues getting it into the punch, but we'll see. There are a couple of things we can do about that as well, but we'll see if it fits. So now if you just push it all the way to the back, all right, it will work. It is long enough, I think. Let's see. Oh, what is in the way here? There it is. All right, I think it will just work. So we just feed it right in all the way to the back, and I have just enough that I've got my fingertip on it. It's fed all the way to the back, and you can see that it's crooked, so I've got to straighten it out. And once I know it's straight, then I punch and pull that tag back out, and it is centered just the way I want it. So now I can use it on my project. And for this, I bumped it up with dimensionals. So that is all you need to know about these. And we will go on to the next card. Here is the next card, and this uses that wonderful envelope. So presuming that this is the way, this is the orientation that it should be, and I did pay attention to this one. All I did was, and I got this tip from another demonstrator, I saw this online, I don't remember who showed me, but normally I would just tear this apart, and she showed kind of a cleaner way of doing it. To just catch the very edge in your trimmer and do the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to do it on the bottom, toward the bottom, so that I know it's straight. And so you just take a little piece off of each end, and when you do that, then you have, it opens your envelope, and I just cut it off here and here. So again, this could be used for the flap of an envelope, and it's not exactly the same shape, but I can show you that at the end, what you can do about that. So basically I cut this out, and that is my card front. Beautiful, cannot let that go to waste. And for this one, I stamped some bees. I again let the paper do the work. But I did do a flower, and I did it on Balmy blue cardstock, and here I've got a scrap. I used that flower from the Art Gallery stamp set, and again, it's a 2-step stamp, okay? This would be the darker color that I'm gonna do in Blackberry Bliss, and this one in Rich Razzleberry. And again, typically when you are stamping a 2-step stamp, you do the darker color first, and in that case, it would be Blackberry Bliss. But I will tell you, I tried it both ways, and it's much easier in this case to stamp the Rich Razzleberry first, And I think that is the case because both of the colors are very dark. The idea of stamping the dark stamp first is that you want to be able to see where you lay the second one. When I stamped this one first and then did this one in Rich Razzleberry, the stamp was so covered with ink that it was hard to see what I had stamped the first time. But if I do it the reverse, which I'm going to show you, you'll see how easy it is. So I am going to start with the Rich Razzleberry stamps or ink pad. And we got to make sure we've got good ink coverage on here. And then we're going to stamp it. Give it a good press to make sure that that ink transfers. And I am going to wait a minute and wait for it to completely dry, and then I'll be right back and we'll do the Blackberry Bliss. And the reason that I wanted to make sure that it dried completely, I inked them, stamped them one right after the other on this card, and it's very hard to see the Blackberry Bliss, and I think that was why, because the Rich Razzleberry was still too wet. So I'm going to bring in my Blackberry Bliss and ink up the other stamp in the two-step stamp set. And you can see that it's much easier to line this up because I can see almost the whole outline of the stamp, so it makes it easy to layer it. And because I let it dry, I think it will show more of the color differences between the Rich Razzleberry and the Blackberry Bliss than it did on my first card. And I'm going to die cut this and be right back. Now I die cut the flower using the Floral Gallery dies. And next we're going to do some embossing. So I have my Versamark, and we are going to stamp for a one-of-a-kind friend that comes in the kit. I'm going to get some good coverage on my Versamark. It may almost be ready to be re-inked. I'm going to make sure I have some good ink on there. And I am going to just stamp it in the center. And actually I did forget, what I wanted to do first was use my embossing buddy that comes with our new embossing kit and wipe it over that first to take off any static, but I forgot, so hopefully this will work anyway. And then here's the rest of the kit. It comes with the tray and a brush and some wonderful reverse tweezers. So we're going to use those to pick this up. And I know you can't see the ink, but it's on there. And then I've got my my white embossing powder, excuse me. And we're gonna put that on there to make sure we've covered the sentiment. And then flick to get hopefully most of the excess off. And I can see that there is definitely some stray there. It really helps to use that embossing buddy to get those little fine pieces off. But this will give you the idea anyway. So we're going to put the top back on this and move it out of the way. And I'm going to grab my heat tool and heat it up. And I don't want to be too close to my surface or it will melt it because it's laminated. So that's why this is up high. It just takes a minute to melt that powder. And in this case, you do get a little bit of, it becomes pink tinged. I think it's partly because I need to re-ink the Versamark. I think I need a little more ink on there, but you get the idea that then you have your embossed sentiment on the front. And I bumped this up with dimensionals. I also used a strip of Melon Mambo ink, again a 1/2 inch, that I then used in that same Lovely Labels Pick-a-Punch, and with 2 pieces of that Blackberry Bliss strip that I showed you before that I cut down, and I tucked them underneath the edges. This card was where I got the idea to do that because I had put it all together without that piece and I felt like it needed something, and then I remembered that piece, so I just tucked one in on each side, and that's what gave me the idea to cut it down. A little Yankee ingenuity there. And I stamped the bees and from the kit, and then I used that same Starry Sky metallic woven ribbon as before and champagne rhinestones again, but there are lots of options for bling you could use. So that was the card that I used with the envelopes. And because there are 9 envelopes, you can make 9 of these cards. Last but not least is this card. And for this one, I used the die cut that is meant to be used obviously with one of the cards. All I did was set it at a little angle because I thought that was pretty. I used a die cut from the set, and there are only 4 of these, so you may reach a point where you run out, but I have a couple of suggestions for that. And one is to take the template or the negative and use it as a template. So what I think I would do, so I would take a piece of Saffron and use the reverse side and take my pencil and trace around. And then cut it out, flip it over, and then stamp on that side. The other thing that you could of course do, instead of making that template, and it would just result in a slightly larger flower, is to take that same sunflower stamp that comes with the kit, ink it up with the crushed curry, and then stamp the way we did earlier. Stamp, pick it up, and then stamp again, and do the center, and then just fussy cut it. So you have either option of what, you know, for creating another flower. And the reason I used the Saffron is because I liked the background here, which was a little bit softer and not stark white. It's the same reason that on the previous card I used the Balmy blue background, because I wanted it to coordinate with the blue background here rather than have it be stark white. So know that you can stamp and even color with your Stampin' blends on light colored cardstock, and you can get some really nice looks. So for this one, like I said, the only thing I did was tilt it at an angle and add the sunflower and the sentiment, both bumped up with dimensionals. And I added some butterflies from the brushed brass butterfly set. So those are all my cards today. Like I said, the kit will make 3 of these, 9 of these, 8 of these, and 8 of these. You can get 3 of these and 3 of these. And I do want to show you my other one that I was playing with. I didn't like the fact that these flowers are even. I wanted to move one up, and because it was a smaller space, and here's another option for creating more cards when you don't have those die cuts. This is actually a stamp from the Celebrate Sunflowers stamp set, and it is actually this one. So I stamped it and then I just cut the leaves off, and I used the same center for this that I did that comes with the kit. So I stamped over it in soft suede. So that was all I did. This is this stamp with the leaves cut off, and the little edges for the leaves you can kind of see are down there. I put them toward the bottom to make it look like maybe I snipped it flat. Here's another sentiment. This one comes from the Happiness Abounds stamp set. And that's the nice thing, where if you need a longer label, you can custom make it using the envelope piece and that Lovely Labels Pick a Punch. And so I did that, and then my sentiment in that one was Let's Celebrate You. I did the sunflower on the inside again with the faux masking of the leaf on the edge. So easy, and I really like the way it looks. And then last but not least, we would have 3 of these cards and 3 of these, whether you're stamping directly on your project or you are die cutting and fussy cutting the flowers and then putting them on. So all together, you would have, when you're all finished, 40 cards, and I believe you would have used every component of the kit. The only exception is, like I said, some of the honeycombs, and I probably will add them. I had sort of forgotten about them when I was creating, so I would probably add them to some of the cards and use those up as well. So I love it. I love that we can make a ton of cards with some extra items and using all of the stamps in the kit and all of the components in the kit. So I hope you like my alternatives. I don't even know how I'm going to take a picture of this to put on my YouTube video because there are so many, but I hope you like them. It was really fun playing with this kit and creating with it. The components are just gorgeous, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. If you liked what you saw today, please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Click on the bell to be notified when I post a new video. I try to do paper pumpkin alternatives every single month. I also have other cards, scrapbook pages, home decor items, tips and techniques, and I'll be rolling out a beginning stamper series soon. So take a look at those. And if you like what you see, please leave me some love in the comments. I appreciate that as well. And I will see you again soon, everyone. Take care. Happy stamping.